camera can actually be seen, or at least the, there it is. That's the actual camera that was captured by the scan, correct?
Right here, I believe so, yes.
And that's how you were able to get to that actual vantage point that you just showed the court. By essentially placing yourself on that camera, then zooming in since we have
Yes.
Augmented photos.
Yes.
Is that correct? All right. If you will, just move a little bit closer to the vehicle. Now, just pause there for a minute. I want to ask you about defendant's exhibit number. What do you want?
Up there.
Yeah, defendant's exhibit number 1.
Sure, because otherwise what would happen, if we scanned this, if this parking lot was full of vehicles, you would, in order to get sufficient coverage, you would need to do a significantly larger number of scans to fill the voids between the rows of parked cars. And it would be less visually appealing. We could scan additional vehicles or place 3D models of vehicles back into the scan if that was pertinent.
All right. But for this case, we asked you only to place the defendant's vehicle back in this, since that's what we were focused on. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
If we wanted to, then we could take states 1 through 5 and actually put all of the vehicles back in there if need be.
That's correct.
Now, I want to ask you about this practice of placing vehicles. Is that one of the purposes of this technology?
Yes, sir.
And you were asked about giving testimony. Do you also do training around the country?
Yes, sir, I do.
And why don't you explain for the court what sort of training you do as opposed to what we're seeing here?
That, you mean talking about hiding the roof?
Correct. And what's the purpose of hiding the roof? What does that allow us to see that you otherwise could not on your version that was previously displayed?
It just shows the spatial relationship between the objects in the interior.
So it demonstrates the interior as well as the exterior?
Yes, and then also you see we have our measurement objects in here, and then these targets were used for tracking or registration of the handheld scans.
Since you brought up the handheld scans, does the position of the scanner change or alter the data points or just the vantage point?
It really only changes the vantage point. There are some physical limitations of getting too close to an object, but for the most part, changing the vantage point actually enhances the scan, being able to see the points from a different location. If you only did a single scan from a single location, you would end up with voids behind any object that blocked the laser.
For instance, if I were a scanner and you turned me on and I did a 360 scan, would that scan show what's just adjacent to the podium?
There would be a complete void behind the podium.
In other words, in order to have that area scanned as well, you would need at least 2 scan points to make sure that we cover both sides of the podium?
Or more, yes, sir.
You said or more, if I say little and his uncle.
Yes, so this is the area that we scanned behind Uncle Mattio's.
Now, for this particular version, you have a box obviously on top of the car so that you've removed the top. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Can you remove that box? What I specifically want to focus on are the markings on the ground such that you were able to demonstrate where the vehicle was by replacing that there. Can you actually see the scanned marks on the ground by the tires?
Yes, sir.
And just dial down to those. Do the passenger rear wheel, if you will, show, all right, where that marking is. Can you go to the other side of the vehicle for me? And there are the other 2 markings on the driver's side of the vehicle such that you were able to place the vehicle back into that scene. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, you can dial back out of that if you don't mind. And why don't you take your seat? I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm almost done.